How's it going, guys? Nerdy Gamer here. So this is going to be my top 15 favorite PS2 games. I figured this time, since we focused a lot on the PlayStation games, I thought why not we go through the PS2. I'll be honest, the PS2 is one of my favorite consoles of all time, as it is a console I actually grew up with the GameCube. So that's kind of why I decided to do the PS2. I originally was going to actually go with 20 instead of 15, but I couldn't think of really a lot of games since, there's so many games I really liked. So I decided to contend it with 15 since I figured that would be the case. However, with this list, there's going to be games that I actually put in there that I have played only on this console that were cross-platform, obviously. But because there were some games I did try on the PS2 that I couldn't really try on other consoles, that's kind of why they're on this list, so please bear with that. But with that being said, let's start with the countdown. Number 15, Crash Twinsanity. Some may argue that this game wouldn't exactly count on this list, since technically this is be a cross-platform game. But I'll be honest, I played more of the PS2 version as opposed to the Xbox version. And I found out that there's supposed to be a GameCube version, but that got canceled halfway through production. So the PS2 version is the one version I actually played the most. Twinsanity, to be honest with you, out of all the Crash Bandicoot games that went cross-platform after the PlayStation games, I gotta say Twinsanity is probably the best one. Even though I liked Wrath of Cortex, and that game actually felt like a traditional Crash Bandicoot game, but it felt like it was missing. There was something missing about that game that it didn't feel like it was like the magic of the PlayStation games. This one, for me, it kind of felt like it was more interesting, like it was more open world, and actually it felt like it was different. And that's kind of why I think I like about Twinsanity. I mean, the humor is pretty good, and obviously I like that you get to play as Crash and Cortex, which I thought was kind of cool. But to me, this game felt really interesting since I used to rent this game constantly as a kid. I remember going to Blockbuster just wanting to rent this game. And like I said before, I loved a lot of the Crash Bandicoot games. That's kind of what enticed me to even playing this game. This game, I would spend hours just playing, and I remember like getting really far into the game. At one point, I actually could not finish the first half of the game, but sure enough, after playing it years later, I actually got to finish the game. So honestly, Twinsanity is actually a pretty good Crash Bandicoot game. And I actually would not mind if this game at some point actually got a remake. This game actually is not bad, and I think for some people, this is kind of like a cult classic to a lot of people that love the Crash Bandicoot games. Despite the game being really good, I do think that the game does have its problems, like obviously the glitches. The glitches in this game are absolutely horrendous, which apparently from what I heard that this game was under crunch times. That's kind of why this game was kind of half finished, which is kind of a shame because this game could have been really good if it actually was like avoided all the glitches, because this game had some interesting glitches that I actually went through, and I think a lot of people kind of went through. But either way, this game is a lot of fun, and I still think that it's actually up there as one of the best Crash games. Number 14, Fantavision. Fantavision was a very interesting puzzle game, as it was something different from other puzzle games I played back in the day. This was actually a game that was recommended to me by Pete Dorr, who actually am a big fan of his YouTube videos. In his PlayStation 2 collection video, he actually showed off Fantavision, and it actually got me interested in trying the game out. And after trying the game out when I played it on the PS4, when it was available on the PlayStation Store, I gotta say I was really into this game. It's basically a straightforward puzzle game where you basically just lit fireworks and you just collect different fireworks as they all kind of lit up in the air. I thought it was a really good game. In fact, it was very different from other puzzle games I actually tried out. So to be honest, I think this is a great puzzle game, and I recommend anybody to try this game out, as it is actually a very different puzzle game from anything I've ever played. Number 13, Klonoa 2. I think I mentioned in my PlayStation video that the first Klonoa is one of my favorite games to play. It definitely really is, as I really enjoyed the first game. And I gotta say, the sequel is actually a lot better than the second by far. It has a lot more platforming, and there's way more visuals, and it just looks a lot better on the PS2. I find that Namco did an excellent job with the sequel overall, and I also really enjoyed playing it on the new collection that Namco released with both games. And I really hope that one day Namco decides to make another Klonoa game, as I really hope they bring back this series. It's definitely one up there as one of my favorite platformers, and honestly, it's just a great series. To be honest with you, I think the second one is one of the best platformers to play on the PS2, and I highly recommend anybody to check this out, as it's definitely a great series to check out. Number 12, Ape Escape 2. I have a lot of fond memories playing the second Ape Escape 2 game, as it was probably the only game I actually got to play out of the series. I have not played the first game or the third game, so this was probably the only one I actually got to try out. However, when it comes to this game, I actually discovered this game back when I was younger. I had a friend of mine who actually had this game, and he actually had us all play the multiplayer for it. I gotta say, the multiplayer was a lot of fun. It was super addicting, and the minigames were just fantastic. It was kind of like Mario Party for us, where we would actually just play all the minigames and see if we could beat each other all at once. It honestly was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun memories doing that. I also found it was actually interesting that this game had a lot of the voice actors from the Pokemon anime in it, which I thought was actually kind of cool. I didn't know that until recently, and I thought it was really kind of cool, as I really love the original anime of Pokemon. Now, I really hope Sony one day actually brings this series back and actually makes more games, because honestly, the Ape Escape games are fantastic, and I really think that they should definitely bring them back, as they are classic games. Number 11, Twisted Metal Black. I think in terms of Twisted Metal games, Black is probably up there as one of the best games I've ever played on the series. I still really enjoy the original Twisted Metal games on the original PlayStation, but Black, in my opinion, is up there as one of the best games for that series. I remember spending hundreds of hours just playing the game with my cousin. I gotta say, when it comes to this game, the multiplayer is just really good. The story mode is actually a lot better, and the characters are so well developed, as it's a little more darker, and there's actually more of like a modern take on them, which is really nice. Honestly, when it comes to this game, it's definitely up there as one of the best Twisted Metal games I've ever played. I wish I could say the same thing about the PS3 game, which I was honestly disappointed with that game, as they honestly could have done way much better with that game. And honestly, if Sony ever brings back the Twisted Metal games, I really kind of hope the same as they could do with this game, where it's probably just as good as Black and the rest of the original games. But honestly, when it comes to Black, Black is just a great game, and I definitely think that this is one of the best games to play. Number 10, Neopets: The Darkest Fairy. The Darkest Fairy was actually the first Neopets game I've ever played. At the time when Neopets was actually really big, and I remember at one point I was really into Neopets. I remember having the McDonald's toys, I remember playing the website where you get to play as like all the different mini games, you get all the points. It almost kind of felt like Webkins to me, where you just did all the mini games just to get for points. It was kind of cool at the time. When it came to Neopets, though, when it comes to this game, Neopets had a few games, but for some reason this one always sticked out to me. This was kind of a game that my cousin used to have, as he was really into Neopets as well. This game, for some reason, it was published by Sony, and it kind of felt like a little bit like a Zelda game, where you kind of just went around, you kind of just solved puzzles, and it actually felt like a traditional Zelda game if it was in 3D. To be honest with you, it was actually a lot of fun, and I definitely think this is actually a really good game for anybody who's really into Neopets, and it was a great game at the time. Number 9, Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Vice City was the very first GTA game I actually got to try as a kid. This was a game I would play a little bit on my aunt's PS2, but for some reason this was a game that, at a time when a kid should never really play GTA, this was a game I actually got to try out. And obviously I did try the other GTA games as I got older, like San Andreas, and obviously the 5th Grand Theft Auto that pretty much everybody in the world has played at this point. And yes, I am looking forward to the 6th game, but I don't know if I'm actually going to buy it at launch, but we'll have to see. But when it comes to like the old school GTAs, Vice City is probably my favorite one. San Andreas is a really good game, but I also like Vice City more than the other games. But other than that, this was a really good game to play on the PS2. Number 8, Ico. Ico was another game that Pete Dorr recommended to me, as he mentioned in one of his videos that Ico is one of his favorite games of all time. And honestly, this was a game that everybody as well said this was really good, so that's what got me even interested even more. And remember back in the day, I rented the Ico and Shadow Colossus collection from Blockbuster, and that was when I actually got into most of the games. For a lot of these games, I did try out Shadow Colossus, and even I tried the PS4 remake. I gotta say, I'm not the biggest fan of Shadow Colossus. Agree or disagree, that's a game that I just never got into. And that's a game everybody loves. Like, Shadow Colossus is like everyone's favorite game to play on the PS2. I'll be honest, I was not the biggest fan of it, as I thought it was extremely boring. I don't know what it is, but I thought it's extremely bored from beating all the bosses. It felt it was extremely repetitive. I just could not play it anymore. I just did not interest me. But when it comes to Ico, I gotta say, was a lot better, as that was a game I just got really into, as the premise is very simple. You play as a kid, you're stuck in a castle, and you're trying to get out. And the game actually reminded me a little bit like old school Zelda, in a sense, where you kind of go around, you beat all the puzzles and everything. It was really cool how they did that, and the storytelling is amazing, and everything about this game is really, really good. I also played The Last Guardian, and that was a game that actually was developed by the same people that did Ico and Shadow Colossus. I thought the game was good, but it was kind of like how I felt about Shadow Colossus. It could have been a lot better if they actually paid a lot of attention to storytelling. But honestly, that was a game that I did spend a little bit of time with, and that was actually not bad for what it was. When it comes to Ico, this was a game I just had a lot of fun playing, and honestly, I recommend anybody who really likes to play anything that's puzzle, or anybody that really is looking into something different, this is a game I highly recommend, as this is a really, really good game. Number 7, Okami. Okami just blew me away on the PS2 back in the day. This is a game that just felt like it was so much like a traditional Zelda game, where it focused a lot on the Japanese folklore, which I'm a big fan of the culture. That's kind of why I loved anime as well. But this game just completely blew me away based on the graphics, how it's so much like the watercolor and the shadings and everything. It just felt like it was so nice, and it was just so beautiful to look at. This is a game that I felt like we never could get anything like this before, and it was just really good. To be honest with you, I spent hundreds of hours just playing this game, and I remember even getting the remake for on the Wii, and even the HD remasters when it was on the PS4 and PC. This game is just amazing, and honestly, it's developed by the same developers that worked on the Bayonetta series, which I'm a big fan of the Bayonetta games as well. And I'm also excited for Capcom to finally do a sequel for it, as it was well overdue. I'm really excited for that sequel to come out. So honestly, Okami is such a great game, and I highly recommend anybody to try this game out, as this is one of the best games I've ever played. Number 6, God of War. Out of the 2 God of War games, I gotta say the first God of War is the best one. Obviously, God of War 2 is really good, but I like the first one better. Now, when it comes to God of War, my history with it is interesting because I wasn't really old enough to play these games. I actually was not old enough at the time, as when the game came out, I was about like 5 or 6 years old. So obviously, the first God of War was a game I could not really play on the PS2. It wasn't until years later when I actually played the God of War collection when it was available on the PS3. And that was at the time when God of War 3 came out, and that game was really good. But the collection was really what got me interested in a lot of the original God of War games. But when it comes to the first God of War, the first God of War is an excellent game. And honestly, it definitely kickstarted a lot of what was good about the God of War games, as it was basically the same gameplay style, and it's much different from like the other God of War games that came after when it was on the PS4, when it started becoming more and more different in terms of gameplay and everything. Even though the new games are excellent, but I think when the old school God of War games were back then, they were still really good to play. It was like a lot of them like a hack and slash and action adventure. It was just a really, really good game. So honestly, the first God of War is just excellent, and honestly, it's definitely one of the best games to play on the PS2. Number 5, Jak 3. Jak and Daxter games were awesome to play on the PS2. I love every single one of the games that have come out, and I think Naughty Dog over the years has gotten better and better as the games they always make. I love all their games like Crash Bandicoot, Uncharted, and even like Jak and Daxter as the games we're talking about. Jak and Daxter has always been one of my favorite games to play on the PS2. The first Jak and Daxter, the precursor Legacy, was really good, even though it felt more like a traditional platform, but it was still amazing to play, and I played that game hundreds of times. The second game, however, I've got to say it's a great game, but the missions are a pain in the ass, but again, that's a whole different topic. Jak 3, however, is probably better than Jak 2 in my opinion. The missions are not harder, the racing are excellent, and the story is actually pretty good too, minus the ending. The ending, I mean, they could have done better with it, but honestly, when it comes to everything in terms of the gameplay, I think the gameplay is pretty solid. The racing I had a lot of fun with as well, even though Jak X is probably one of my favorite racing games of all time. Even though I could have put Jak X on this list, but honestly, if I had to pick between out of all the Jak and Daxter games, I think Jak 3 is my favorite one, as I have a lot of fun memories playing Jak 3. This is just a game I would spend hours and hours playing, and honestly, this is such a great game that I recommend anybody who loves the Jak and Daxter games that this is the best game out of all of them. Number 4, Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal. I think in terms of every single Ratchet & Clank game that got released on the PS2, Up Your Arsenal is the best one. I pretty much love every single Ratchet & Clank game that got released on the PS2. These games are just fantastic, and they're just classic games that go back and replay, and obviously I've replayed them many, many times with my cousin, and obviously I've played them on the collection on the PS3. These games are just fantastic, but honestly, out of all the games I had to pick out that is my favorite, Up Your Arsenal is the best one. It's got the best story, it's got the best premise, it's got the best weapons, the new Rhino in that game is excellent. I mean, everything about this game is just amazing. It just has everything you would expect from a Ratchet & Clank game, and it's just awesome. This game is just fantastic, so honestly, I highly recommend anybody to check this game out, as it is the best Ratchet & Clank game I've ever played. Number 3, Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves. Sly Cooper's up there is one of my favorite games to play on the PS2. Up there with like Jak and Daxter, Ratchet & Clank, Sly Cooper's up there is one of my favorites. The Sly Cooper games are just classic games, and at the time when I actually did not know anything about Sly Cooper, I didn't know about it until I was around 10, maybe 11 years old when like the collection came out. The collection for the PS3 is really what got me interested in the Sly Cooper games. I never exactly owned them on PS2, but obviously when it came to playing these games, I got to play them on the collection and actually kind of got into them sort of at a whim. And after trying all the games out on the PS3, I gotta say, these games are just classic games. This games, when it comes to the story and the actual art style and just the platforming, they're great games. And I really love every single one of the characters. The Sucker Punch did a great job making this game in terms of everything I love about it. This game is just awesome, and honestly, when it comes to all the Sly Cooper games, I gotta say 3 is probably the best one. 3, in terms of characters and story and pretty much all the platforming and all the missions, is just phenomenal. Like, they did an excellent job with concluding the series with number 3. Now, we could obviously say that about Thieves in Time, but that's a whole different other topic, because eventually I'm thinking about doing a Sly Cooper video. But when it comes to everything about Sly 3 is probably the best game I've ever played of the series. It just has everything from the characters, the story, and everything from what you would expect from an actual good game. This game is just amazing, and I really recommend anybody to check this out if anybody's interested in checking out a lot of the Sly Cooper games. Number 2, Kingdom Hearts 2. I've always considered Kingdom Hearts as one of my favorite games series of all time, as Kingdom Hearts has always been one of those games I always look forward to every single time there's a new game that gets released. When it comes to the first 2 Kingdom Hearts games, they've always been games I've always grew up with and always had a lot of fun with playing. Now, in terms of how the 2 games are, originally the first game I was going to put on this list instead of number 2, but the only reason I picked 2 out of the first game is because number 2, in my opinion, I have a lot of fun memories with, as I used to play this game more than I did with the first game. And that's mainly because I used to rent this game all the time from Blockbuster. For some reason, Kingdom Hearts 2 was always the game I always picked from Blockbuster. I could have picked every single one of the games out there, like whether if it was like a Mario game, or if it was either a Pokemon game, or anything that was out there for Blockbuster I could have rented. For some reason, I always picked Kingdom Hearts 2. And at a time, I used to watch all the cutscenes on YouTube and used to see people play the game. And after seeing my cousin getting into the Kingdom Hearts games, it got me interested in wanting to try the game for myself. And that's kind of how I really got into Kingdom Hearts 2. This was just something I wanted to try out for myself. And every single time I played this game as a kid, I've never beat the Roxas storyline, as I always assumed the Roxas storyline was always bombarded me to play that game. And in fact, Kingdom Hearts 2, in my opinion, even though I love the story and everything, as I love all the fan service of Disney and Square Enix characters, I still did not like the story for Kingdom Hearts 2. For some reason, it dragged on, it was long as shit, I just never really was a big fan of it. That's kind of why I always did not admire the story for Kingdom Hearts, and that's just for all the games entirely. Kingdom Hearts 2, for me, the story just didn't seem like it was like perfect for me. But yet, for some reason, I just loved Kingdom Hearts 2. Kingdom Hearts 2 had just enough worlds, it had more content, had more characters, and all the Disney worlds, even though I loved all the Disney films at that time, it just felt like it had everything you would expect from a normal Kingdom Hearts game. And every single characters from the fan service, from the Disney characters, from Square Enix, and all the Final Fantasy VII characters, the Final Fantasy VIII characters, it just seemed like it was perfect, had a blend of everything you would expect. And Organization 13, even though they showed all the characters from that as well, it just felt like it was great. So honestly, in terms of gameplay, in terms of everything of this game, I just think it's my favorite Kingdom Hearts game. Even though I do not give a shit about the story that much, but I still love this game regardless. I have fun memories with it, and the game is just great, and even replaying it after the collections have come out with over the years, it is still a fantastic game. My number one favorite PS2 game is Ratchet Deadlocked. That's right, Ratchet Deadlocked is my favorite PS2 game of all time. Now obviously I did say that Up Your Arsenal is one of the best Ratchet & Clank games I've ever played, and which it really is, but Deadlocked is probably up there as the best one. To be quite honest with you, I really appreciate this game mainly because of the multiplayer. This was a game that I would spend hours with my cousin just playing the multiplayer and playing with friends. This game has like one of the best multiplayers I've ever played. Even better than a lot of the Halo games, I gotta say. This game honestly has like the best multiplayer, and even though it is a Ratchet & Clank game in itself, it still was a really good game, and the story is really good, and the missions are really good. So honestly, this game is just fantastic, and it is probably the best game of all the Ratchet & Clank games, and probably one of my favorite games of all time. It is just that good, and it's kind of a shame that Sony kind of screwed the pooch on it when the collection came out, where they only released it, and obviously the game was very glitchy, and they could have obviously done a lot better with it. And I hope one day, if this game ever does get a remake, or maybe perhaps if Sony Games remakes all the other Ratchet & Clank games, they could remake this game too. It would be awesome to see, but who knows. Honestly, this game is just my favorite PS2 game of all time,